208 2008, 308 3008, 508 5008. In the Peugeot range, regular body style models have 10 and crossovers have 20. And then comes the Peugeot 408, a crossover with 10. Never mind why, but is it at least any good? Let's find out.
For years, Peugeot labeled its models in a simple way. The first digit denoted the segment, the second digit was traditionally a 0, and the third digit denoted the generation. Until, at the end of the first decade of the 21st century, Peugeot arrived at a dead end. Generation numbers ran out and new segments were in the works. So it was decided that the 108 was the smallest regular model and the 508 the largest. On top of that, 00 would stand for crossovers, which gradually replaced minivans and some special models like the 207 SW Outdoor. And it all worked well until a coupe crossover appeared with a single 0, the 408. You'd be excused for thinking this is the successor to the 407, but no, because the D segment model is now the 508. It comes as a liftback and a station wagon, and the large family crossover is the 5008.
The 408 should therefore fill the gap between the 308, 308 station wagon, 3008 and the D segment models. Now, it sounds like a 3008 coupe maybe, but I think it's more of a 5008 coupe, and it's very complicated, and it doesn't help that in some markets 308 sedan is sold as the 408.
The European 408 is shorter only than the 508, and the 5008 has a longer wheelbase. The 308 SW and the 5008 have more boot capacity, and the 408 is longer even than the Toyota RAV4. The boot is so deep that my large suitcase fits on the long side upright. From memory, I can only recall Skoda Enyaq with a boot of similar dimensions. The boot has 536 liters capacity in the petrol engine version, 508 liters with the optional focal audio system. In PHEVs, the cargo volume drops to 471 and 545 liters respectively. As in the Peugeot 308, the traction battery eats up some of the space under the boot floor. Like in the 308 hatchback, also the 408 lacks flat cargo area, but the 408 features shopping bag hooks. That's rare in French cars. I find them useful as I do the pocket on the right side and the elastic tapes on the left side. It stops smaller items from getting thrown about.
Electrically operated tailgate is available only on the top GT trim. This is the Allure Pack mid trim, which means you have to open the hatch yourself. However, thanks to powerful gust struts, the tailgate just pops up right open with very little help. Now, shutting it is more of a problem. You have to slam it, otherwise it may look shut, but there is still a warning light on the dash. Now, this reminds me of my old Peugeot 306. I bought it new back in 2000, and from the get-go it had a problem with the tailgate not shutting properly. So I asked the dealer to adjust the lock. Sir, in a few months the gasket will go bad and everything will be fine. In 12 years I owned it, it hasn't gone bad. French quality.
The Peugeot 408 has a ground clearance of almost 19 centimeters, not as high as the 3008 or 5008, but more than 4 centimeters higher than the 308, 2.5 centimeters higher than my Mini Countryman, almost a centimeter higher than the Kia Sportage. But like most other Peugeot models, the 408 does not come with all-wheel drive, not even in the plug-in hybrid version. You'll safely park with the front facing the curb, but try not to drive too far off the tarmac. I rarely talk about the looks of a car because you can see and judge the beauty shots, but the Peugeot 408 deserves a special mention. There's something going on from every angle. There are bits popping out, lines cutting across, 3D radiator grille, flat rear window with 2 ailerons. This car deserves to be admired from a distance and then from up close.
There is good legroom in the back, which was to be expected, and not so much headroom, which was also to be expected, since the difference in body height between the 308 and 408 is less than the difference in their ground clearance.
In the rear, there are good-sized door pockets, cup holders in the armrest with a ski hatch behind it. The backrest splits 40-60 with ISOFIX anchor points only on the side seats. There is an air vent and 2 USB ports. There's a hump in the middle, unfortunately. The cockpit of the 408 is largely the same as in the 308. When getting in, you have to get over a high door sill, so if a crossover was supposed to make it easier for you to get in and out, give it a try in a showroom. By the way, you have to adjust the height of the steering wheel very precisely so that on the one hand, you don't hit it with your thigh when getting in, and on the other hand, so that it does not obscure the instrument cluster.
Since the 2012 208, Peugeot has used the i-Cockpit design in its cars. It involves making the steering wheel smaller and elevating the instrument binnacle to the top of the dashboard. Instead of peering down at the dials through the steering wheel, the idea is that the driver should have the instruments within their field of vision above the steering wheel.
More about the genesis of the i-Cockpit design and practical aspects when we hit the road. For now, I'll just say that I understand what the designers were trying to achieve, and once I'm behind the wheel, I find the layout as comfortable as a traditional cockpit. But I also understand why some drivers are complaining, because they have to raise the steering wheel higher to get in, and then it obstructs their view of the instruments. I, for example, don't see the Peugeot logo and the French flag at the bottom of the screen. Speaking of the screen, the three-dimensional display mode, which debuted a few years ago in the current generation 208, is only available on the highest trim version, and Peugeot seems to be slowly moving away from it as it focuses primarily on two-dimensional modes. The information and how it is displayed in front of the driver can be configured. You can also configure the contents of the central display and the display with shortcuts to the most frequently used functions. Since last year, when I drove the Peugeot 308, in which this infotainment system debuted, I feel the interface has been updated ever so slightly and the system is more stable. I no longer have problems with Bluetooth unpairing all the time. I still don't like that it takes a few clicks to turn on the heated seats or change the temperature settings, but there's nothing I can do about it. What's more, when I use Android Auto, I have to go back to the Peugeot system to control climate settings. And there is still no way to configure proximity lock. You walk up to the car and it unlocks, you walk away and it locks, and in my case it means unlocking the car on the way to the gate, locking it when I get to the gate, and then unlocking it again when I walk back from the gate to the car. A beep each time, not ideal for my neighbors when I leave home early in the morning. There's a wireless charger, a shelf underneath, cup holders, good storage compartment under the armrest, and a large glove box. Pockets in the doors are also good size. There are 2 USB-C ports, one next to the cup holders, one under the armrest, but with rectangular frames. Remember that before you bring your USB-A cable. And you have to be deliberate turning the car on or off. Short press of the start button won't do.
This is the 130 horsepower, 1.2-liter 3-cylinder engine variant. It's currently the most popular Stellantis Europe alternative to electrified drivetrains. It can even be found in much larger Peugeot 5008. I often hear complaints that such a small engine is not suitable for large, heavy vehicles. Well, it depends on how and where you drive. Unless you plan to race from the lights and you for some reason need to overtake every car in front of you, this engine is good enough. I recently drove a few hundred kilometers in France, and there were so many speed cameras along the way that only people familiar with this particular stretch of road sometimes allowed themselves to overtake. But I assure you that this engine has enough oomph to cruise at 140 kilometers per hour. At the same time, for a small engine powering such a large car, the interior is surprisingly quiet. That's something Stellantis seems to be good at. Or PSA, maybe.
Peugeot claims 0 to 100 km per hour should take 10.4 seconds, and from 80 to 120 km per hour, 7.6 seconds. In normal mode, I was a bit slower to 100 km per hour. In sport mode, I was a bit quicker. From 80 to 120 km per hour, I got 7.7 seconds in both modes. It was only me and my video gear on board. With passengers, the 408 would be much slower. By the way, the Peugeot 408 can tow up to 1,350 kilograms. The claimed combined fuel consumption of 6 liters per 100 kilometers is somewhat optimistic. 7 to 8 liters is more realistic. Transmission isn't the fastest on kickdown, and the small engine displacement doesn't help with sudden maneuvers. Take it easy, so what if you get to your destination a couple of minutes later?
I already mentioned the soundproofing, but how about the comfort of the seats and the suspension? The seats are very comfortable, they're very good. Regardless of the equipment version, you can choose the driver's seat, certified by AGR, or the German Association for a Healthy Spine, and it's well worth it. As for the suspension, I have mixed feelings. On smooth asphalt, the 408 is comfortable, but not necessarily roly-poly through the corners. However, on bigger potholes and bumps, the suspension seems to hit the bump stops quite unpleasantly, almost like in Korean cars a decade ago.
Here I'll go back to the i-Cockpit design and its genesis. While traveling in bad weather, Peugeot designers noticed it's hard to pay attention to the road and check the instruments at the same time. Now, PSA did already have heads-up display in some of its higher-end models, but maybe it was a cost-saving measure. Instead of choosing a more expensive equipment version, as standard, I get a substitute for a costly HUD. Unfortunately, data on the driver display still makes me take my eyes off the road in certain situations.
For example, Android Auto navigation directions appear for a moment and disappear. I noticed this in the Peugeot 308 review, but I was unable to replicate it on camera. Now I know what the issue is. I have a feeling that over the years, successive teams have forgotten why the i-Cockpit was created. And today it's just another dashboard layout that doesn't necessarily do what the original designers intended. It's diluted.
At least the adaptive cruise control data in the Peugeot is clearer than in the Opel. However, the adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assist work average by today's standards. It's fine on the motorway, but on regular roads the system often can't keep up with tighter bends, and that's even with the car in front doing the maneuver properly. While rear visibility is pretty good for this body style, thick A-pillars create huge blind spots. Be careful when approaching junctions. A proper 360 camera is an option. Lesser models get a rear-view camera with a stitched image that mimics a bird's-eye view. Prices of the Peugeot 408 start at €36,750 for the Allure trim with a 130 horsepower 1.2-liter PureTech engine with an 8-speed automatic gearbox. At the time of writing the script, fully electric version is yet to be launched, so the only other engine option is a plug-in hybrid with either 180 or 225 horsepower, with prices starting at €44,500. This test example in the Allure Pack trim with a 1.2-liter engine and some options costs €40,100.
The Peugeot 408 is hard to classify, but it's pleasant and surprisingly practical. And you won't lose it in the parking lot. And how do you like the Peugeot 408? Let me know in the comment section below.
If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.